My sister Emma Noha looked my fiancé straight in the eye and said, "She only wants you for your money, Aaron." My mother smiled the same way she smiled 9 years ago when she thought she had buried me for good. Ask her about the man she's been hiding. I didn't defend myself. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there in my own kitchen holding my coffee with both hands, while the two people who were supposed to protect me tried to destroy the only good thing I had left. They had no idea Aaron had been collecting the truth for 5 months. They had no idea the man they were trying to use against me had been waiting 9 years to speak. They thought they were ending my wedding. What they actually did was wake up the silence I had been feeding for 9 years. My name is Lauren Hartwell. I'm 31 years old. If this story is already making you angry, hit like, subscribe, and drop your city and the time where you are right now. I want to know who's listening. Now let me take you back to where this really began. Not the kitchen. The snorts kitchen was just the morning my family found out the silence they had been counting on had stopped paying interest. The story began 9 years earlier in a hiring office on Madison Avenue when I was 23, and my mother decided I was not allowed to have a future that did not run through her. I own a design studio in Nashville called Hartwell Interiors. 6 employees, a corner space in the Gulch, a client list that mostly came from one phone call in 2024 from a woman whose husband played for the Predators. Last year we billed just over $1.3 million. My family does not know that number. My family thinks I do freelance work. That misunderstanding is not an accident. I have spent 9 years curating exactly what my mother and my sister are allowed to know about me. I met Aaron Castellan in March of last year at a fundraiser for a children's hospital. He was the kind of man who asked me 3 questions about a Persian rug before he asked my name. He said his work was boring strategy consulting. Then I found out his boutique firm in Nashville and Atlanta was the reason 2 of my favorite clients had ever found me. He proposed on the 19th of September on the porch of a rented cabin in Asheville. I cried for 10 seconds and then I laughed and he laughed with me. We did not tell my mother for 2 weeks. When I finally did, she said the words I had heard since I was 10 years old. "He's a wonderful catch, honey." That was the sentence. Not "I'm so happy for you." Not "tell me everything." A catch. Like Aaron was a fish I had managed to pull out of a pond she had stocked. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday the 2nd of May at St. George's Episcopal in Belle Meade. 38 guests for the rehearsal dinner on Friday the 24th of April at the Hermitage downtown. 46 for the ceremony. My father, Edward, was driving in from Knoxville. My mother and my sister were on the guest list because I did not yet know how to write a list without them. 2 weeks before the rehearsal, my mother called me. "Honey, Caroline and I were thinking we'd come over Wednesday morning to help you with seating. You shouldn't be doing all this alone, sweetheart." I sat in my studio kitchen and looked at the iPad on my counter. The seating chart was finished. The flowers were paid. The menu was confirmed. There was nothing to help with. I knew that. She knew I knew. That would be lovely, Mom. 8 o'clock. I hung up. I did not call Aaron. I texted him 3 words. "They're coming Wednesday." He replied with one. "Ready." Peace, I had learned by then, has an expiration date. My mother had been quiet for almost a year because she thought I had finally given her what she wanted. A nice man. A nice ring. A nice public ending to the long embarrassing chapter of her younger daughter being too independent for her own good. She did not know what was sitting in Aaron's jacket pocket that Wednesday morning. She snorts. Did not know what I had been collecting in a Google Doc called September 2025 for the past 8 months. She did not know that the breakdown she had been telling the family I had in 2017 had a witness, and that the witness had been waiting since 2017 to be asked one simple question. The kitchen was already lost when she stepped through the door. She just did not know it yet. I want to tell you about a girl who is 22. She is not me anymore, but she still lives in the back room of my chest, and on certain mornings I can hear her breathing. In May of 2017, I graduated from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville with a degree in interior design. I had not slept properly in 3 weeks. I had been waiting for a letter. The letter arrived on the 18th on creamy paper with a discreetly embossed letterhead. Marlowe & Voss Design Group, Madison Avenue, New York. A summer internship. $2,800 a month for 3 months. Housing in a shared apartment in Murray Hill arranged through a small program the firm ran for out-of-town interns. The letter was signed by creative director. His name was Theodore Marlowe. I called him to accept. He had a careful voice. He asked me about my portfolio. He asked me which palette I had used for the project on page 17. He asked me whether I had read a specific book by an Italian architect. I told him yes. And I told him why I disagreed with chapter 4. There was a pause on his end, and then he laughed. And then he said, "I will see you on June 12th, Ms. Hartwell." I framed the letter. I hung it on the wall over my desk in my undergraduate apartment. I called my father, who said he was proud of me. I called my mother, who asked the name of the firm 3 times. She asked the address. She asked the office phone number. She asked the name of the creative director. I read all of it to her from the letter. She wrote it down. I was dating a boy that summer. His name was Bryce Whitlock. He was a children's book illustrator. He drew frogs and small confused-looking dogs. He was good and kind and the wrong kind of suitable for my mother. He had agreed to come with me to New York. He had a sister in Brooklyn we could stay with at the start. I told my mother about Bryce in the same conversation as the letter. That was my mistake. She did not yell. She never yelled. She left a printout of an article on the kitchen counter 3 days later. The article was about divorce rates among, in her words, creative class couples. She left it there for 3 full days. I did not move it. Neither did she. On the morning of the 14th of June, 2 days before my flight, my mother knocked on my bedroom door at 7 o'clock in the morning with a coffee in one end and an envelope in the other. "Baby, I am so sorry." She set the envelope on the bed. Inside was a letter on the same creamy paper as the offer. It said the firm regretted to inform me that due to internal restructuring decisions affecting their summer cohort, the previously extended internship offer was being formally rescinded. The letter was dated the 12th of June. It was signed in a thin black scrawl, T. Marlowe. I read it 3 times. My throat closed. I called them this morning to ask about parking. My mother said, "They told me." I asked them to put it in writing so you could have closure. "I am so sorry, honey." She sat next to me on the bed. She rubbed my back. I think I was crying. I do not remember. I did not call the firm back. That is the sentence I have spent 9 years asking myself about. I did not call them. Bryce told me to. He said, "Just call them. Just one more time." I said, "What is there to ask? The letter is final." I closed the laptop. I gave up the apartment in Murray Hill. I told the program coordinator through a polite return email that I would not be coming. I did not know my mother had typed the rescission letter on the family desktop. I did not know that the day before she had called the firm pretending to be a worried relative and told them in a tight, regretful voice that I had suffered a nervous breakdown and would not be able to take the internship. I did not know that 2 days after she handed me that envelope, my sister Caroline, who was 24 and unemployed and recently divorced from a man named Trevor Boone, boarded a flight to LaGuardia with a portfolio cover that was not hers. Certificate programs in commercial interior design. I read every book my father sent me at Christmas. He sent me one every December. He never wrote a note inside more than 2 words long. Just because. In May of 2019, a woman at table 11 left me a $50 tip and a note on the receipt that said, "Your eye for color is wasted on tables." There was a single initial sign beneath it. M. I never found out who she was. I kept the receipt. I still have it in a small wooden box in my office. In 2019, my father divorced my mother. Snorts. He moved to a smaller house in Knoxville. He started sending me $200 a month through Venmo. The memo line always read, "Just because." He did not ask me to acknowledge it. I did not. He kept sending it for 18 months. I used some of that money for the bond on my first commercial lease. By the autumn of 2024, I had 6 employees. We had projects in Belle Meade, in Mountain Brook, in Buckhead, in Lookout Mountain. I bought a used Honda Accord instead of the BMW my accountant said I could afford. I sent my mother a Christmas card every year with a photograph of my cat on it. I did not invite her to the studio. She did not ask. In December of 2024, an email landed in my inbox. The sender was an address I did not recognize. A long string of letters at protonmail.com. The subject line was 4 words about 2017. Read when ready. There was no body. There was one PDF attachment, 1 page. I opened it. It was an intern roster from a design firm I had not let myself say out loud since the morning my mother handed me the envelope. Marlowe and Voss Design Group, Summer 2017. A grid of names and ID badge photos. On the 3rd row, 5th column was a name I knew. Lauren Hartwell. Next to that name was a face. The face was not mine. The face was Caroline. Her hair was lighter. She was wearing glasses. Caroline had never worn glasses in her life. I closed the laptop. I did not open it for 3 days. When I did open it, the email was still there. I did not reply. I did not delete it. I did not look at it again until the following August. I told myself I had imagined the face. I told myself it could be a coincidence. I told myself a great many things in those 8 months. The truth is, I was afraid. I had built a life inside the silence my mother had pressed me into when I was 22. The silence had a shape. It had walls. It had a ceiling. I had decorated those walls. I had hung photographs and held parties and even fallen in love inside them. If I opened that email all the way, the walls would fall, and I would have to live in whatever the silence had been hiding. I was 30 years old. I was about to meet a man at a fundraiser who had asked me 3 questions about a rug. I was about to be loved properly for the first time. I was not, that December, ready to know. The walls came down anyway. They always do. Snorts just took until August. Aaron proposed on the 19th of September. I said yes before he finished the sentence. The truth, though, is that I had been in the long beginning of a different story since 6 weeks before that. Since the 11th of August. Since a phone call. It was a Tuesday. 11:32 in the morning. I was in my studio reviewing renderings for a kitchen in Mountain Brook. The receptionist Megan picked up the front line. I heard her say, "She's in. Hold on one moment, please." Then she came to my office door. "Lauren, there's a Cassidy Riley from Pinecrest Brand Studio in Atlanta on hold for you. She says it's a verification call." I did not know anyone at Pinecrest. I did not know anyone named Cassidy. I picked up the phone. "Miss Hartwell, thank you for taking my call. I'm in our senior hiring office and I'm reaching out as part of a final stage background process for an applicant. I have a question that may seem unusual." "Go ahead." "The candidate is Caroline Hartwell Boone. I believe she is your sister." I said nothing. Her resume lists a silence inside my head that has happened to me 3 times in my life. It is the silence right before my body figures out what my mind has just understood. The first time was in my bedroom at 22, the morning of the envelope. The third would be on Wednesday, April 15th, in my own kitchen. The second was that Tuesday in August on the studio phone. I said very clearly, "I have never worked at Marlowe & Voss. I have never been to Manhattan in a professional capacity. Sister." I have no information about why she would say any of those things. The line was quiet for 4 seconds. "Thank you for being clear with me, Ms. Hartwell. I'll need to follow up internally. I appreciate your time." She hung up. I sat at my desk for 40 minutes. Then I closed the door of my office. Then I opened my laptop and went into my email and searched for the word Marlowe. The anonymous email from December was the second result. I clicked on it. I opened the PDF. I made the image of Caroline's badge larger on the screen. I traced the smudge along the bottom of the badge with the tip of my finger. There was an ink mark there. A thumbprint. Near the corner of the L in Lauren. I opened a drawer in my desk and pulled out a small archival box I had moved with me from East Nashville to the Gulch and never opened. Inside that box was the envelope from 2017. The original offer letter from Marlowe & Voss. The rescission letter my mother had given me. I laid both letters side by side. I set my phone on the desk and turned on its flashlight. I held the offer letter beside the rescission letter under the light. The logo on the rescission letter was 4 millimeters smaller than the logo on the offer. The font of the director's name on the rescission was missing the dot above the lowercase I in Marlowe. The date on the rescission used periods between the numbers. American business letters use slashes. My mother had typed the rescission letter on the same family desktop she had used to print the bulletin for our church. I sat in my office until the sun went down. I did not call Aaron that night. I did not call my father. I did not call anyone. I poured myself a single glass of wine and watched the streetlight outside my window come on. I did not cry. I just watched the light. I did not call Aaron for 5 more days. He was not the first person I needed to find. If you have ever sat in a quiet room and realized that a story you had been living inside since you were 22 was not your story at all, drop 1 word in the comments. Just write witnessed. I would like to know how many of us. Extended to me at Marlowe & Voss. I am told a woman impersonated me there that summer. I would like 15 minutes of your time in person when you are willing. He replied in 19 minutes. Miss Hartwell, I have been waiting 9 years for this message. I will make any time on Thursday, December 11th that works. What do you want, Lauren? I told him. I did not want to file a lawsuit. I did not want the police. The statute had run on every piece of it. I wanted the silence to stop. I wanted my mother and my sister to be in a room with the people they cared about most when the silence stopped. I wanted my father back. I wanted a wedding that was actually mine. Aaron listened. Then he said, "If we do this in public, we do it where they will not be able to come back from it." Yes. Friday night, April 24th. The Hermitage. Yes. He took his time. He walked into my kitchen. He came back with a cup of tea. He set it down. "When does Theodore fly down for the rehearsal?" "Friday at 6 o'clock. "What time is the flight?" He did not ask if I was sure. He asked what time. That was the moment I knew exactly who I was about to marry. We spent the next 4 months getting ready quietly. I gave Aaron the password to the Google Doc I had been keeping since September. He started his own beneath mine. He spoke to his father, Charles Castellan, about getting Brendan Voss invited to the rehearsal under the guise of a friendly business introduction. Brendan was the younger cousin of Henrik Voss, who had co-founded Marlowe and Voss with Theodore in 1998. Brendan had been in the room when the firm had decided to terminate Lauren Hartwell for plagiarism in October of 2017. Aaron's father agreed without asking why. Aaron's father had liked me on sight. So had his mother, Helen. So had his uncle, Walter. In early March, my mother hired a wedding consultant I had not asked for, a woman named Vivian Drexel. She called my studio with too many details that should not have been hers to know. I let her think she had access. Aaron and I took screenshots of every message she sent. In the second week of March, Caroline ran into Aaron at a bar in Germantown called Henrietta Red. She was drinking white wine. She talked for 40 minutes about how I had never quite recovered from 2017, about how she just hoped I wasn't putting him through what I put our. On my console of Aaron and me on the porch in Asheville the night he proposed. She turned the frame over in her hands. She set it down a little too softly. I poured her a mimosa. "You always did land on your feet, didn't you?" she said. "After everything." My mother smiled into her glass. We moved to the iPad on the kitchen counter. I had the seating chart up. I had not invited my mother to weigh in on it. She wanted to weigh in anyway. She noticed that Aaron's mother, Helen, was seated at table 1 and she, Patricia, was seated at table 4. She froze for 1 second. Caroline noticed. "Of course Aaron's mother gets the front, Mom," Caroline said sweetly. "That's the new family now." My mother said, in the same voice she had used the morning of the recession letter, "Honey, don't you think your own mother should be at the front? Aaron's parents are hosting the rehearsal, Mom. The seating reflects that." My mother looked at Caroline. It was a look I had seen exactly twice in my life. The most recent time before that had been in the kitchen of my parents' house in the second week of June 2017. I had not known at the time what that look meant. I knew now. I needed to step out to take a call. Theodore was confirming his flight times for the rehearsal. I walked to the hallway and answered, "Yes, Friday 6 p.m. The Hermitage." I walked back into the kitchen. I set my phone face down on the console near the door. Caroline excused herself to go wash her hands. The bathroom was off the kitchen. The hallway was not on her way. When I came back, my phone was face down where I had left it. The angle was different by perhaps 2 degrees. The screen had been lit when she touched it. The most recent message visible would have been Theodore confirming Friday at 6 o'clock at the Hermitage. Caroline returned to the kitchen 4 minutes later, slightly flushed. My mother said, "Caroline, honey, are you all right?" "Yes, Mom. They left at 1 o'clock. They thanked me for brunch." Caroline never thought to delete them. For 3 days my mother did not call. On Tuesday night, the 14th of April, she called. "Honey, let me come tomorrow morning. We need to talk before the rehearsal. Just family." 8 o'clock, I said. I hung up. I texted Aaron 3 words. "They're coming Wednesday." He texted back one. "Ready." Wednesday, the 15th of April. They rang the bell at 3 minutes to 8. My mother was in a navy silk blouse. My sister was carrying an overnight bag. "In case we stay over to help, sweetheart," Carolyn said. I had not invited them to stay over. Aaron was in the second bedroom with the door cracked. He had been there since 6:30. He had brought a manila envelope from his car. The envelope was on the kitchen counter inside a brown grocery bag. There were 3 coffees on the counter when they walked in. I had poured them 10 minutes earlier. They were already going cold. "You look thin, honey." My mother's voice was warm. "Are you eating?" "I'm fine, Mom." Carolyn complimented the apartment. She said the lighting was beautiful in this morning's sun. My mother sat at the island. I sat across from her. Carolyn stood at the window with her coffee. We made small talk for 8 minutes about flowers, about a cousin's baby, about whether the Hermitage's chef was the same one who had done my cousin's wedding 2 years ago. Then Aaron walked in. He was wearing a navy Oxford shirt and gray slacks. He had not been planning to come as far as my mother and Carolyn knew. My mother's eyes moved across him and then to me and back to him. She missed half a second of breath. She recovered. "Aaron, honey, I didn't know you'd be here." "Patricia, Caroline, good morning." He poured himself a coffee. He stood with his back to the counter next to me. Caroline drank a swallow of her own coffee. She set the cup down. She turned to face Aaron. She made her face soft. "Aaron, can I be honest with you? Please. She only wants you for your money, Aaron. I'm sorry to be the one to say it. I'm her sister. I love her, but you deserve to know." My mother set her coffee down. She smiled. It was the same smile I had not seen since the morning of the recession letter. "And honey," she said to Aaron, "ask her about the man she's been hiding." I did not defend myself. I did not raise my voice. I held my coffee with both hands. Aaron looked at me, not at them, at me. "Do you want to answer to that?" "Rehearsal in front of everyone Lauren cares about. Until then, please leave." Caroline looked at the envelope. Her color drained. "What is in there, Aaron?" My mother asked. "You'll see on Friday." "Lauren," Caroline said. Her voice was shaking now. "Lauren, you don't have to do this." I put my coffee down. I looked at my sister. "Caroline, take your bag, get in the car." My mother stood up. Her hands were trembling slightly. She tried to hold Aaron's eyes. He looked back at her without anger. That was the part she could not handle. She had counted on him being shocked. He was not shocked. She picked up her purse. They left at 8:42. The door clicked. The apartment went still. Aaron did not gloat. I did not cry. I poured the cold coffees down the sink. He pulled out fresh cups. We sat at the island and drank in silence for a long time. "They're going to spend the next 9 days lying about what happened in here," I said. "Let them. Friday will speak louder than 9 days." He locked the envelope in my kitchen drawer. Friday, the 24th of April. The Hermitage Hotel Grand Ballroom. 6 o'clock for cocktails. 7 o'clock for the seated dinner. 38 guests. A piano player named Curtis Vale in the corner playing the kind of jazz standards that make a room of strangers easier on each other. I wore a long emerald silk dress. Aaron wore a navy suit. My father, Edward Hartwell, drove in from Knoxville. He arrived at 5:45 at the front of the hotel. He had not seen me in 9 years and 1 month. I walked out to the porte-cochere alone to meet him. He stepped out of his car. He had aged 10 years and 9. He was wearing the same camel-colored sport coat he had owned since 2014. I hugged him in the doorway. He cried into my shoulder very quietly, the way men of his generation cried. He whispered, "I am sorry I was 9 years late." "You're on time now," I said. I let him inside. Helen Castellan was already in the ballroom doorway. She greeted my father with, she had known he was coming. She had ordered him a specific bourbon. I introduced him around the room. Theodore Marlowe arrived at 6:15. I had told my mother and who arrived together at 6:08 that he was a family friend of Helen's from New York. I introduced him to my mother and my sister. He shook each of their hands. "Miss Hartwell," he said to my mother, holding her hand for 1 second longer than was needed. "I believe we have spoken on the phone. Summer of 2017. My mother's face whitened for a quarter. Her glass. "To my future daughter-in-law," she said, "who built a quiet, beautiful life from absolutely nothing. To Lauren, who deserves every minute of this." The room raised their glasses. 36 glasses. My mother's hand on her glass was tight. Caroline's was tighter. When the toasts began to move around the room, my mother stood up. Her place was at table 4. She had not been asked to give a toast. The room turned to her politely. "I'd like to share something, family. It's something Aaron deserves to hear before the wedding." Helen Castellan set her glass down with great care. Aaron's father, Charles, did not move. Walter Castellan, who was 67 and a retired federal judge, looked at his nephew over the rim of his glass. My mother smiled. "Lauren has always been our dreamer. She's always been a little fragile. We're so grateful, all of us, that Aaron has found her." Caroline stood up next. She did not wait for my mother to finish. She raised her glass. She smiled at Aaron. "As her older sister, I just want to say one thing tonight. Aaron, you're a good man and good men deserve honesty. She only wants you for your money. I would not be telling you this if I did not love her enough to want her to be honest." A small sound went through the room. Not a gasp. A held breath multiplied by 36. My mother nodded as if Caroline had just delivered a blessing. "And Aaron, dear, ask her about the man she's been hiding." Caroline smiled. It was a smile I had seen since I was 12 years old. I set my napkin down. I did not stand. I looked at Aaron. Aaron stood. He reached into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. He pulled out the manila envelope from my kitchen drawer. He set it on the table. He opened it. He took out a photograph and laid it on the white tablecloth. He picked it up again and held it out toward Caroline. "You mean this man?" he said. Caroline's eyes hit the photograph and stop. The color left her. She did not speak. "This is Theodore Marlowe," Aaron said. He turned a quarter turn so the room could see the photograph. It was a photograph I had taken in Tribeca in December on Greenwich Street in front of the building where Marlowe Advisory had its offices. Theodore Snorts was in the photograph. He was the man who had been waiting 9 years. Mr. Marlowe was, in 2017, the creative director who personally extended an internship offer to my fiancé. The offer was rescinded in writing on June 14th of that year by a letter signed in his name. The letter was a forgery. It was typed on my fiancé's mother's home computer. The internship was then taken that summer by a woman who flew to Manhattan under my fiancé's name. The woman was terminated by the firm in October for plagiarism. The signature on her termination letter is not my fiancé's. The signature on her intake form is not my fiancé's either. Would the room like to guess which woman in this ballroom took the internship? The room did not need to guess. Theodore stood up at table 8. He held up a slim black binder. "I have the original badge photograph here," he said calmly, addressing the room as one would address a small board meeting. "Anyone who would care to compare faces is welcome to. I have carried this folder for 9 years." My mother gripped Caroline's arm hard. She stood. Her voice broke before her composure did. "That was 9 years ago. Let it go." The room went very still. 11 seconds of stillness. I counted. My father stood up. He did not raise his voice. "Patricia, sit down. You've said enough for 1 decade." She did not sit. She looked around the room. She was looking for a friendly face. She did not find one. Walter Castellan, who had presided over 20 years' worth of federal courtrooms in Middle Tennessee, looked at her exactly the way a man looks at a witness who has just impeached herself. Walter put his glass down. "I think we'd all like to hear from Lauren," he said. I stood up. I did not take a piece of paper out. I did not lift my voice above conversational level. I looked first at my father, then at Helen, then at Aaron, and then at the room. "In June of 2017, I said, "I was offered a paid summer internship at Marlowe & Voss Design Group in Manhattan. I never made it onto the train. The morning before my flight, my mother handed me a letter she had typed on our family desktop. The letter rescinded the offer in the firm's name. She had also called the firm in the previous days, posing as a relative, and told them I had had a nervous breakdown. My sister Caroline, who was 24 and unemployed, flew to New York on the date I was meant to fly. She took the internship in my name for 3 months. The firm terminated her in October for plagiarism. They have her badge photograph. They have her signature. They have the dates of 2 voicemails to my old phone that I never received because my mother had switched the SIM card. I was told my offer had been rescinded for restructuring. I was told I had a breakdown. For 9 years I believed her. Last August, a hiring manager in Atlanta called me by mistake during a background check on Caroline's resume. That is the only reason any of us are standing in this room tonight." I paused. I looked at Theodore. He nodded slightly. "I am not here," I said, "to ruin anyone. I am here to take back what I should have known 9 years ago." I sat down. Brendan Voss stood up at table 2. "I'm sorry to interject," he said. "I'm Brendan Voss. My older cousin Henrik co-founded Marlowe & Voss with Theodore Marlowe in 1998. I was in the partner room when we made the decision to terminate the intern who came in under the name Lauren Hartwell. The woman we terminated for plagiarism is not the woman who is sitting at the head of this room tonight. I will swear to that in any deposition that anyone in this family would care to take." He sat down. The room shifted. I felt it physically. I have only felt the first time was at the end of a freshman lecture at the University of Tennessee when a professor leaned across his desk and told me my color theory was better than anyone else's in the class. The second was that night. My mother tried one more time. Her voice was thin now, almost girlish. This is a misunderstanding. Lauren has had problems for years. She's been seeing therapists. We've been protecting her. Helen Castellan set her wine glass down. She turned in her chair. Her face was a face I would later see her use only twice more in my life, both times in defense of one of my children. Patricia, Helen said. Her voice was perfectly level. We have all heard enough. Your daughter has spoken. The witnesses have spoken. I think it would be best if you collected your things and went home now. Please, while there is still grace in this room. My mother stood for one more second. She tried to pull Caroline up by the arm. Caroline tried to stand. Her legs did not hold. She sat back into her chair. My mother walked to the side door of the ballroom alone. She left the room at 8:42. I noted the time. It was the same time she had left my kitchen the Wednesday before. Carolyn put her head into her hands. A waiter came forward quietly. He helped Carolyn up by the elbow. He walked her out. She did not look at me. The door closed. The ballroom was quiet for 11 seconds. I counted. Curtis Vale in the corner looked at Helen Castellan. Helen looked at her brother-in-law, Walter, who gave a single small nod. Curtis began to play. He played Claire de Lune. He played it softly. Walter Castellan stood up. He raised his glass. He did not have to raise his voice. To Lauren. 36 glasses came up. The ballroom raised them as one. If you have ever had a family member rewrite your story without your permission, type one word in the comments. Just write witnessed. Sometimes that is the entire point. Not revenge, not a courtroom, just to be witnessed correctly by enough people in one room. Helen Castellan came to my chair. She put her hand on my shoulder. Sweetheart, she said, you are home now. Do you understand me? This is home. I nodded. I did not cry until then. I cried one tear. I did not wipe it. My father came around the table from the other side. He stood next to Helen. He did not touch me. He waited until I reached out for him. For 9 years I had eaten Thanksgivings alone in apartments I had paid for myself, and I had convinced myself that preferred it. Standing between my father and Helen Castellan in that ballroom, I understood for the first time that solitude had never been my preference. It had only ever been my budget. The wedding was 8 days later on Saturday, the 2nd of May at St. George's Episcopal Church in Belmead. The morning was cool and bright. I wore an ivory silk dress with long sleeves. Inside the bodice against the seam over my heart, I had sewn a small square of black leather. I had cut it from the cover of the portfolio I had handmade in my final year of college in the spring of 2017. The portfolio had never made it to New York. The cover came with me down the aisle. My father walked me. He was steadier than I expected. He cried during the readings. Theodore Marlowe read a short passage from a book on the craft of making things. He looked up after the line about the work that survives the silence, and he looked at me for 2 full seconds before he sat down. Aaron's vows were 5 sentences long. The 5th one was the one I will carry. I will never make you choose between being yourself and being loved. We had 36 guests. 2 seats were empty. The first empty seat was on my side of the aisle in the second row, and it was for my grandmother, Constance Hartwell, who had died of pneumonia in May of 2014. I had set a single white iris on her chair. The second empty seat was the one my mother might have taken. Carolyn did not come either. We had not invited them. We had not sent them a notice. They knew. They stayed in Knoxville. I learned the rest in the weeks that followed. 5 days after the rehearsal, Pinecrest Band Studio rescinded its offer to Carolyn. She had a phone call with their general counsel that lasted 4 minutes. The phone call was followed by a letter referencing material misrepresentations in her application. Within the next 10 days, 2 of Caroline's smaller consulting clients in Atlanta cut their retainers. Caroline put her townhouse on the market. She moved back to Knoxville. The week after the wedding, my mother was politely informed by the chair of the Knoxville Garden Club that her membership would not be renewed at the next annual review. 3 women she had been close with for 20 years stopped returning her phone calls. Her church book club, the one I had heard her describe 1,000 times as her lifeline, asked her to step back from leading discussions. My father moved into a small apartment 11 minutes from my studio. Theodore Marlowe stayed in Nashville for 2 more days after the wedding. He went to my studio. He stood for a long time in front of the abstract piece I had hung on the back wall the year I had opened the place. It was a sister to the one on his office wall in Tribeca. He did not buy it. He looked at it. He flew back to New York that Monday morning. He sent me a single email after he landed. The subject line was 9 words. Please tell me when the next exhibit opens. I did not file a single lawsuit. I did not need to. The truth had done its work. I wrote one short blog post on the Hartwell Interiors website about what it meant to design a room when no one in your family had ever designed one for you. The post was shared 23,000 times. I have not written another one since. On the first Monday after our honeymoon, I went into the studio. I made coffee. I opened my laptop. I opened a new project. The morning light came through the front window the way it always does in the Gulch in May in a long slant across the floor. For 8 years my family told a story about me. They told it at every dinner I was not at. They told it so often they began to believe it. They stole 8 years of my voice. They stole 8 years. They will not steal another sentence. Did you like this story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you enjoyed this, support the channel with a super thanks so I can keep bringing you more stories like this. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next